Welcome, Mehul. I'm very happy to have you here. And I think I just reached out to you a few days ago, and you said, "Yeah, let's do it." And here we are. So thanks for taking the time. And I would like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
First of all, thank you for having me and reaching out. Social media and Twitter is a great place for that stuff. And background-wise, I'm a co-founder of Matic Robots. We started about 7 years ago, and we're building fully autonomous home robots and trying to bring families out of stone ages of Roombas. It's time to reinvent those robots, and we think if we can have a self-driving cars in the world, why can't we have a self-navigating robot that doesn't need to bump in our homes constantly? So that's how we started with this idea, and we're building essentially Tesla FSD for home robotics.
This is such a great thing because um, everyone has a home. Everyone would like their home to be tidy and clean and not spending time on that. So we're talking about humanoids and we're talking about self-driving cars, but every single one of us has a home, right? Or the majority of people. And so this is I like this approach of making really everyone's life easier.
And precisely, that's really the way we started. I think you're touching on to the point that we looked at in 2017, looked around and we're like, there are 200 plus self-driving car startups. There are 200 plus industrial robotic companies, but no one is spending a ton time for home. There is not a single home robotic startups. What's going on? And we're like, look, everyone has this problem. Every one of us is tired of having to clean our floors again and again. So why don't we try to solve that problem? And it's really exciting that humanoids and self-driving cars and robotics is going there. And I know some people worry about will there be killer robots? And our internal joke after having to deal with it quite a bit is that if killer robots ever come, just throw wires in front of them and you'll be fine.
Hmm.
It's the one single thing that is a bane of all robotics existence.
I'm really keen to understand because seven years with a startup is quite some time. But if you don't mind, let's go back a little bit, a little bit earlier to your career, and let's maybe let's spend a few moments on your upbringing and your education. I'm always very interested in how is the your surrounding, how is your environment, and yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit about this.
Sure. So I actually grew up in India in a small town called Vadodara for my first 15 years of life. Um, then for whatever reason, and I don't have a good memory of it, but my dad decided that, hey, I should go to United States to study. So I moved to
Hmm.
Florida at my uncle's place for high school. So finished high school in Florida. And I remember there was a time after high school that I wanted to go back to India and just be with my parents. But then he really asked me at a very early age that what do you want to do? If you come back to India, you can probably sit on my business or get some job. What do you want to do? And I remember just telling him that no, I want to build my own business, build my own company career. And so then he's like, then you got to go back. So came back to United States, and I did my undergrad at University of Maryland. Um, and my joke for USA is that any Indian kid who grows up in USA, it's at least a pre-med at some point for medical schools and wants to be a doctor. So I was that for first 3 years of my undergrad and took medical college admission tests, MCATs, and everything. And then at some point realized that I have zero desire to be a doctor and switch over to technology. And I think part of that desire to switch over to technology also is that I started my undergrad in 1996 or 96 to 2000. And that was really the time when internet was booming. The first bubble was sort of quote unquote internet bubble was happening and startups were in vogue across United States. And there was seemingly just another company going public and at $30 on our day one and ending the day at $300. So the hype and excitement around technology was just so palpable back then. So that's when I actually switched over to technology. And then once I graduated from undergrad, I went straight to a startup in Northern Virginia area, in Washington, D.C. metro area. And that turned out to be a spectacular failure. We burned through $30 million in 11 months. So that was a sort of like introduction to what not to do in a startup. Even after all this time, it sounds amazing, and it really was amazing failure. But the optimism back then was just insane. Like everyone thought they were going to be millionaires and billionaires. So it was really fascinating in that sense. But when Bubble crashed, that startup went belly up as well. And um, so you go through your first journey and go through the failure and go through the layoffs and everything. But luckily for us, we had seen that okay, this startup is not going very well. So I had like a couple of months before I could find a job, and I found a job at Accenture as a consultant because one of the VPs at the startup was going back to his old job as a partner
Mm.
and took with him. But then,
Wait, wait,
and
wait,
then
wait, wait, because you're going way too fast now because I'm always interested in those times that are specifically how do you say this in English? So defining, so to speak.
Mhm.
So you were going over this fact very easily, but you said that your father is a businessman,
My father is a businessman. That's correct. Yes, in India.
and because I'm always interested in having this kind of courage and having this kind of ambition, having this kind of uh, what's called having this kind of bravery. So to say, I can do this. I want to become a businessman myself. It's very often that you see someone in life who can be a role model for you and where you can see this is how they do it. And in the very end, we're all humans, right? There's no non-human things that people are doing. And I really would like to spend 1 or 2 moments on this. So do you think that seeing your father and his behavior influenced you to become a person where you thought, I want to do this too?
I think growing up, I know he was a self-made person, self-made businessman. I don't believe my father likes to joke that he wasn't never good at studies and education. And I think he took 6 years to complete his undergrad. He also talks about how he was probably the least expected person to build any sort of wealth through business. And he started his business at 38, so very late in his life, and
Mhm.
most of his success is between 38 and 50. That 12 years is sort of a peak of his career. So that was definitely one of those things, this idea that hey, you can become a self-made businessman
Mhm.
and do so. That was very in general, he preferred that route and he would encourage that route. And he's been always my, even now he's the person who is vicariously living his entrepreneurial life through Matic. And every time I talk to him, first question is, how's Matic's doing? What's your problem? What are you facing? And that just comes with the territory that once a businessman, always a businessman. It's like
Mhm.
I'll give you a really good example. If you take him to, he came to United States and the way his brain works, and maybe that's where I got it. But I took him to get a haircut, and we're sitting there for 15 minutes while the slot opens up for us to go haircut. And within that 15 minutes, he's taking account of how many chairs the haircut has, how many people are waiting, what is an hourly, what they are charging, and then he estimated within that 15 months how much money this haircut place is making in about a month. And then
Nice.
that's just how his brain works constantly. So that was really helpful. And even when I made transition from MCAT, so medical, to business, he was the only supporter. I want to say, which is, and he was the one who was a proponent that yes, technology is going to be big. You should absolutely go in technology. So that was very interesting as well, because all I had to do was apply to med school and I would have gotten in. But on a flip side, he pushed me to the other side.
And it's nice that you're giving me the perfect way to slide into my next question that was very close to that is having the guts to say you spend some time in the studies already and you had this goal to become a doctor and then saying, and especially as we know from not from self experience but through uh, media, I guess so. That Indian parents are very hard on their kids, and you say it's almost kind of a
Yes.
stereotype joke that they expect
Yes.
your kids to become a doctor, and then pulling yourself out of this tremendous pressure then that can sometimes be on people that everyone is expecting you to behave a certain way and then say
Yes.
no, this is this is not the way it is for me. I'm not a doctor by heart, so I don't want to spend my life doing something that I might be good at, I might be making decent money at but this is not something I really have passion for. So how was it for you to really make this decision and say, okay, even though I spent already some times and effort and money on it, I will pivot and do something else. How was that for you? What helped you to make the decision?
Absolutely. Great question. So luckily for me, while I was doing prepping for medical college admission test MCATs, I actually worked at Kaplan Educational Center where they teach you how to do it. And that's where I got to know a lot of these students and who were acting as a teachers for
Mhm.
MCATs. And I saw their life as a med students, and some of them were 30-year-old, third year and fourth year. And then I realized that some of them actually have a 20-hour straight shifts that they have to do. And that was very fascinating. And I'm like, wait, why 20 hours? And you're treating with someone's health. It's life and death. Why are you so sleep deprived in some ways, right? So I started asking all these questions, and then it sort of just percolated that, hey, if I'm going to go to med school, that's another 4 years of 4 years of education. Then I do another 5 years of residency. So by the time I become doctor, I'll be probably in my late 20s to early 30s. And then if I want to do specialization, it's even more. Around this time, you are still sort of a student or a resident, so you're clearly not having a good life or making money or being wealthy at all. So at some point, it just dawned on me that, hey, if I want to be a doctor, the amount of the journey is painful enough and tough enough that it's something that I really, really, really should want. That should be the reason that I can't see myself as being anything other than doctor. And for me, answer was immediately no, that's not the case. Like I respect that profession. I think doctors are amazing, but it's not the only thing I want to do. I'm much more interested in this technology and other side of things. So it was very much a rational choice. And in life, what I realized is that sometimes it's easier to figure out what you don't want than what you want. So
Mm.
that pivot was that, hey, I definitely don't want to be a doctor. That's not the only thing that I'm excited about. So let's pivot and let's figure it out. And I wasn't initially clear that what I would do, whether, stick to biochemistry or chemistry, but it was very obvious very soon that I should be going to technology, and that's where my heart is. And then I left all the biochemistry, chemistry, and other stuff behind completely. And
Thanks,
and
thanks for
and I,
sharing
I
this.
and I have to assume that just the excitement around internet and the startups world and what was happening definitely probably impacted me as well without me realizing it.
So being surrounded by this hype, I mean, because there was a huge hype, right?
Yes.
Surrounded
Yep.
by this hype and the possibilities, not only necessarily the money, because you were mentioning people looking for
Yes.
becoming a millionaire, becoming a billionaire,
Right.
but the possibilities and the drive. You were saying something about the I think you said not positivity. You said something like the
Optimism.
optimism, thanks. So you said the
Yes.
optimism can be very infectious, right? And interesting.
Yes, exactly. And there was this idea, right? And everything that people thought would happen with the arrival of internet did happen. It took longer. It didn't happen within 2 or 3 years that we were expecting back in that late 90s bubble time. But everything that was talked about did happen, from, delivery services to amazing e-commerce platforms to just connecting throughout the world and us having communication across the world for this podcast. Everything did happen. So optimism was right. I think the timing or how long it will take wasn't necessarily the right optimism, and that's where expectation was much shorter than the reality. But it was a really great time to kind of just come out of undergrad or come out of college and experience everything. And then on a flip side, I always think that getting laid off in your first job is also in some ways a really good experience because now you can deal with anything. You've just gone through that experience. So it's not the end of the world. Nothing really bad happens. You can find a job and move on to the life. So it just becomes one of those things that it's just easier to go through those experiences again and again.
So nice that you're saying this. I mean, people will find out eventually. But last week I got laid off from Nara Robotics, the company that I'm working for. So
Sorry to hear
um,
that.
no, it's I think it's okay. As you said, you learn that you will be okay. There will be different things coming for you, and that sometimes it's necessary. It seems like it needs to be a
Yeah,
good fit, and I think here we found out that might not aligned on a lot of things,
I agree.
cultural-wise, but in the way you approach things, and yeah, I feel this kind of optimism at the moment too, because there's a lot of things I have on the table. I think they might be interesting enough. And as you said, your father was 38, you said, and
Yes.
so I'm 41, so I'm a little bit older than your father. And but there's so many things happening, and I think right now I would like to ask the question. You've been with Matic now since 7 years, you said.
Correct. Yes.
How is it for you to be now in this AI robotic hype, which just ignited like 2 years ago, like the real hype that it came into mainstream? I think mainly pushed by ChatGPT, but also by mid-journey, like tools that people were able have access to and were able to use, and then obviously the humanoid hype that really pushed it over
Yes.
the edge. So how is it for you to like being in this industry and being in this specific niche industry and business, and now seeing like the world, like everything comes together, and how is it for you to really be there?
So it's great. I think the best way to say it is you cannot really, if you're a surfer, you cannot really create a wave. You can only catch a wave. So there was this anticipation in 2017. We knew that given the advancements in AI and given the advancement in some of the AI chips, so my co-founder and a partner Navneet helped spec out Google Coral TPU, the tensor processing unit, from Nest perspective prior to this. So we knew these AI chips are coming out. So there was this anticipation that these two trends will enable robotics and it's going to happen. We can't really predict when, but it will happen. So the fact that it's happening is super exciting. That world is finally opening up to the possibilities that we can really take. It's really just going back to that internet era, and the optimism is everything. That hey, in 5 years, 10 years, everything will change. At the same time, just like the internet era, I do believe that optimism is well found, but the timing of when we'll get there is also somewhat too aggressive. So everything that people will say will happen with AI will happen. Don't know when, because making anything work just across the world in a very very specific way takes time. So that's really the only way. So in some ways it's great, but then and for us, what we've learned, to be entirely honest, Julia, is that we don't go get up too excited about the what's happening in the macro or the trends, or too down about that, because having lived through Silicon Valley, now I've been here for 20 years in San Francisco Bay Area, there is always something exciting every 3 years.
Hmm.
In 2005, when I moved, Web 2.0 was exciting. Then the app became exciting. Then I remember hardware had a renaissance, and then big data was exciting, and then SaaS was exciting, and then crypto was exciting, and then AR, VR was exciting, and then self-driving car was exciting. And I couldn't go on and on. And there in between somewhere, 3D printing was exciting. So that Gartner hype cycle is very real. It happens. And what you realize ultimately is that, hey, it's not necessarily about the technology, it's about what problem you're trying to solve. And is the technology available today to solve it in an elegant and meaningful way where customers can really, really take advantage of it? So it turns out internet wasn't ready for companies like DoorDash or Instacart or Ubers to exist, but the app and smartphone ubiquity with the internet itself now made all of those solutions possible. So all those things were tried in 90s, late 90s, failed, but then later on it worked out. So it's just a matter of which problem you're trying to solve and how does current technology really enable you to go solve it in a meaningful way.
I mean, this is mainly, I mean, I speak to PhD students here as well, not solely with founders and CEOs, but mainly. And something I really like that the way you think about this is not mainly technology driven versus problem solving driven. And so there's a huge, it doesn't seem to be big, right? But everyone who has a business, and I've been listening now and talking to a lot of founders,
Yeah.
really understanding that it's not about how can I apply my technology or my solution versus is there a real need, is there a real problem that I can solve? And then comes the second part.
I-
I, I, I can solve it for my customers in an easy way, in a way that um, yeah, that brings value immediately or yeah, very easily. And I think this is something that the majority of companies are not really paying attention to. And my wife, unfortunately, is the one who needs to cope with my anger towards everything and anything. It's like this is the best thing you can come up with. So it's just
Yeah.
it's like it's bad. It's bad. It works somehow, but it's not doing anything like I'm relieved that I bought this. Like, oh, thanks. If I wouldn't have, I think it's doing an okay job, but an okay job is not justifying the effort, not only of me buying this, but having product designers and having secretaries and a driver and a building and like all this is actually it's unnecessary because the problem is kind of solved, but not really. And especially as you said, it should be solved easily. How did you came up with this? Was this something that you learned throughout with Matic, or was this something that you learned very early on and then were able to apply? How was that
Yeah.
for you?
Great question, actually. We learned this with our first startup. Um, you know, in 2005, there are a few chapters we skipped here, but in 2005, I graduated from business school, moved to Bay Area. In Bay Area, Silicon Valley, my first job was at Salesforce.com. Quickly again realized the process of elimination that I have zero desire to sell CRM products to other businesses. So at that point in time, computer vision. So I left again, and then at that time there was this startup. I believe it was the first computer vision startup in Silicon Valley back in 2005, 2006 that was trying to build Google Photos just 10 years too early. So
Mm,
it sort of recognized that, hey, people with digital cameras, because back then you had those physical digital cameras, but with digital cameras, the amount of photos being taken are skyrocketing. And with that, there will be a need to search and organize and save your memory. So we were working on this, and I happened to get excited about that particular computer vision as a technology and joined this company. And that's where I met Navneet, my co-founder. So we had been in computer vision forever. And that was the company where we spent about 5, 7 years going through all kinds of ideas, trying to figure out where we can apply computer vision.
mm,
Um, and we were way ahead of the curve. Even then, I don't think the lesson that, hey, we should be solving problem was really there. Luckily for us, that company was we were both early employees, and that company got acquired by Google in 2010. So both Navneet and I left, and we said, okay, you know how to do research and engineering. His PhD thesis is the probably foundational piece of classical computer vision, this algorithm called histogram of oriented gradients. So he was through and through computer vision person. He can research and engineer. I can do product business marketing. So he said, okay, let's start this company and we're gonna let people do what Microsoft Connect does, but just using this camera. So why don't we allow people to use gestures in a webcam? And that was great. And we built this app that allowed users to control iTunes, Spotify, YouTube using gestures, and gestures or play, pause, previous song, next song, thumbs up to like a song, shush to mute. So this is all in 2011, 2012, way before AI was even hyped and way before computer vision became sort of a ubiquitous. We also might have built technically the first edge device AI application ever before the edge device as a term was coined back then as well. So everything was great. We launched this app. It worked well. We launched it on Mac App Store. It became number one app in 73 different countries worldwide. I believe we had like 77 million gestures performed. Both Apple and Google were really interested in us and the technology we built. And at some point, we had zero desire to sell, but we realized very quickly that no one wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to buy gestures. Today I need gestures. It was really, really nice feature to have. It's a really, really nice technology, but it's not something you actively go buy for. On a flip side, if a microwave inside your kitchen broke, you're probably going to go and immediately try to purchase it because that's something you need. So that was the realization, and we were also part of Y Combinator, and with our first startup in 2012, when Paul Graham PG was still part of it, and he would come to us every day. Every time we met him, he would look at us and says, "Oh, I know you guys. You guys are technology looking for a problem to solve. Have you found one yet?" And he would repeat that over and over again. And it took us and initially we're like, wait a minute, isn't our app the product? We're already building the product. What do you mean, we don't have a product? And then you quickly realize that, hey, there wasn't any specific problem we were trying to solve, that what we were building was really, really cool, but not necessarily the most useful thing in the world. So it was a lesson that we learned the hard way.
Mm.
On a flip side, the other reason why this particular lesson resonated is on a flip side, um, we also when we were doing Flutter in 2011, Stripe, the payment company, which is now valued at $100 billion, was also very tiny on Ramona Street with 5 or 10 people. And I remember walking into their offices and meeting John Collison and thinking, wait a minute, isn't payments already done? Or wow, infrastructure is so boring, right? And then we were so cool. Well, it turns out when you solve a boring and extremely amazing, extremely unsexy problem, you have a really good business, but cool and sexy doesn't always lead to good business.
Uh, really like the way the story unfold here. Uh, Something that I'm always curious is when is the point then you again
Mhm.
say, okay, I've put so much money and effort and time and energy into it, but I need to face reality because features are nice to have is good. Being cool and sexy is something everyone would like to, but in the very end, it comes down to, is it something worth people up like thinking
Mhm.
paying for, like finding paying customers first? This is a simple rule, but it seems when you're so deep into the tech and trying to solve very hard technical problems, which can be exciting too, right? Uh, and then there's some hype around you. I mean, being in Y Combinator, right, and having Paul there and asking those questions, you can feel top of the world because the competition is high and everyone would like to be in that spot. And then saying, you know what, it's just not good enough. It's just not, it's as you said, waking up one morning and asking yourself, can I live without this? Most likely,
Yeah,
yes. How is it to face this reality and dealing with it and then focusing on something else?
I uh, I mean, we had two. So Paul was one. The other person who was really an investor and advisor to us was Tony Fadell, who invented iPhone and iPod, and he would also say the same thing. So luckily for us, I think you have to surround yourself with people and strong advisors who is going to challenge you, who is going to question your thing. And then these are the people who help you think through instead of day-to-day technological requirement and things you're facing. They will ask questions around, hey, what are you going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What is your long-term vision? Where does this technology apply? And that forces you to think. So that's one forcing function, which is surrounding yourself with as much as possible with good advisors and investors. The second part, which a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes think of investors or VCs as these people you just have to deal with, but actually, fundraising is a really, really good filter as well, because investors do will look at you from a business point of view, from a long-term point of view. They are evaluating not just the technology, but what is technology worth. So as you make progress, they will ask you questions around, hey, what is the business? What are the things you're trying to do? What is your revenue? Are you going to be an app company or are you going to be a gesture company? Okay, great, gesture company. What does that mean? And then it forces you to think. And we had a couple of things that we realized. One was that again, we weren't solving any problem. In fact, or I'll say that we were solving a problem, and solving the gesture solved the problem of a distant computing. So we as humans use gestures when someone is far away. If we know someone who is far away, instead of screaming, we might wave at them. So we use them when voice isn't necessarily the most optimal way to communicate. In the same exact way, when computing is far away from you, let's say TV, then instead of having to fiddle your remote, it's much easier to say just shush and mute it when you quickly need to do it. So those sort of interactions were amazing, but that also meant that cameras need to be ubiquitous in your home or in an environment. And cameras weren't yet ubiquitous as well. In fact, most popular thing in 2013 was mobile phone. And mobile phone is where you have a touch and even though it has cameras, touch is right there. You don't need gestures for it. So we quickly realized that at the moment, timing is incorrect. As I mentioned early on, that you can only catch a wave, you can't really create a wave. And we just did not know when the wave of AI or gestures would come about. Maybe there was a, if we had thought on it hard enough, maybe we would have found some way to make it happen. But at that point in time, we also, as I mentioned, had an option to get acquired by both Google and Apple, and they were both interested in it. And we just felt that this is a technology that is better part of being a platform. It's a feature that belongs to a product and a platform, and these are the two most important platform in Android and iOS. So if we kind of say no to them, where do we actually go from here? So that was just a, realizing where we are, what we are doing. And then the other part, I think one other thing I'll mention is Peter Thiel has this amazing framework, and he has a lot of them. But this one he kind of mentioned at some point, which I had learned about, that if you are getting an offer to sell your company, um, that you do not think that you don't believe you will be able to realize that value over the next 5 years, then sell. If you feel that you can exceed that value over the next 5 years and you have the vision and you're getting underpriced, then definitely keep going. But you have to have that 5 year vision. You have to have an ability to say, I can increase 10x of that value, because there is a time and money of a value. And we just didn't have that vision or the plan in place. So that's the difference. We corrected all those mistakes with Matic, but those were some of the mistakes we made with Flutter. So just you go through it and you learn.
I mean, sometimes it's hard to accept, and I think there's a difference also between understanding and accepting, right? I understand a lot of things that I do wrong, but I cannot accept, or I understand, but I'm unable to apply. So this is where the learning, where the intelligence, I think, is to really and the discipline and all those other characteristics that makes you a successful businessman or successful person in general. Am I able
Right.
to understand what I did wrong, and am I having the courage and the strength to do better on the next try? And I think here I see a lot of founders, but I see myself on a daily basis, right? Being able to identify but unable to apply. And yeah, very,
Totally.
very good to really get this inside view on this process. So thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
Coming back to the things that you do, that you guys are doing now. You said you've been starting this company 7 years ago. I do have a vacuum cleaner at home, and it's not intelligent. It bumps into things. But just today, I've been at a friend's house, and he has a, let's say, a little bit more intelligent
Mhm.
vacuum cleaner where he can define a zone, and the robot does not jump like running into something. And he
Mhm.
said, and I was telling him today I have a podcast recording in the evening because now it's just after 9. And he said, I showed him on my mobile phone, and he said, but it cannot go under
Mhm.
the couch, right? And
Mhm.
is that problem already solved? And then he was showing me his vacuum cleaner, and so how did you guys um, change the product, improve the product? What's your vision for the product? Maybe you now we can spend a little bit about the what you guys are doing
Sure.
today.
Sure, absolutely. So happy to jump into it. So I'll start from the beginning. I think you had also alluded this point of view that 7 years, how are you guys going with it? I think this time around, before we started a company on day one, we decided that whatever we were going to do next, we were never going to get acquired. So that was number one. And having that ability to make that decision was really critical. The second thing we decided was that, okay, if we're never getting acquired, this means that we're building this company for long term. So let's make sure we pick a domain and idea that is so complex and so challenging that we can keep working on it for next 20 years and not get bored. And then third rule was, hey, we're a computer vision guy. Computer vision has to be the key piece of the puzzle in whatever we do. So this is how we started thinking about it. And then, as I mentioned, we were working at Nest prior to this, building Nest security cameras and thinking about homes. So this idea that, hey, all these companies are trying to build self-driving cars and trying to build industrial robots, but they're not necessarily solving home robotics, became really relevant. And I have been a customer of robotic vacuums before. And for me, they have been very, very frustrating. And then back then, I had a golden retriever dog. Unfortunately, he passed away. But our joke was he sheds twice a year, 6 months each. So his hair was all over the place. And I got all these robot vacuums, and none of them were able to keep up with it. In a very simple way, most of them, the bin is so small that they would get full by the time robot even cleaned like half of the room or maybe even a quarter of the room. And then we would come home and you would have this very a bowl of hair that it would just spit out instead of actually putting in its bin. So it always created more issues. It always chewed wires. It always chewed Legos, this sort of things. It just didn't know what it was trying to clean, got stuck in tassels. So all these issues existed. And then we saw that some of these other companies are now solving it by building this home base or dock, which has this where robot comes in and takes all out of the bin. And this idea that okay, now they've built a vacuum cleaner to clean a vacuum cleaner just made sounded very inelegant. And I don't know if you ever experienced it, but if you actually get it, because you're going against the physics of gravity, your dirt is going from flat vacuum all the way to the top. It literally sounds like a rocket launcher. It's just like a rocket taking
I
off.
was
And I just
reading out
couldn't
today.
it's yeah, and I just couldn't fathom that how a family with young kids and pets who are sometimes very scared of noise can deal with this sort of noise. Like this is just so loud. I don't want to have that in my home. And not only that, but we go out of our way to hide appliances behind veneer of a closet and make our home look elegant. And here's this ugly big duckling vacuum just sitting in my living room. So all these things just were a little bit of a problem, but fundamentally, at a very high level, we realized that none of these robots truly understand where they are. Are they really in kitchen? If they are in the kitchen, are they on the right side of the counter or the left side of the counter? Are they in front of refrigerator or behind refrigerator? That sort of precise understanding didn't exist. So entire robotic vacuum or home robotics effort felt like trying to build self-driving cars without having Google Maps or GPS.
Hmm.
And the answer there is no matter how smart your car is, if it doesn't know where the road is going or where it's located on the road, it's lost. Even if we are behind the wheels, we don't know where the road is going or where we are located on the road. We are also lost. So the basic necessity is to be able to know where you are in order to navigate from point A to point B precisely. So that's step one. Step two, we also realize that to 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 address some of your questions, we also realize that um, in home environment is entirely, and in fact, we can take it to the higher level and say entire indoor environment, indoor world is built by humans for humans to fit our vision-based perception system.
True.
So if you're going to have fully autonomous humanoid or home robots that is doing everything on our behalf the way we want, well, they need the similar perception system as we do. Just like people are coming to conclusion that, four-legged robot or two-legged robots are probably perfect to navigate our world from steps to all kinds of things. In the same exact way, even perception system-wise, vision is the primary way of doing it. Now, not only you need to do it in a vision way, but you also need to do it in a top-down vantage point. So if you're looking at the floor or a home, you want to look at the same way we do, because then we can interact with it and we can understand what it's looking at. But the flat robots are a little bit more like a ant level thing. So there were just so many fundamental things that were different that we wanted to do that we just threw the whole circular design out of the way. And then, so that was one. So we just realized that, look, if we're going to build fully autonomous home robots, first thing we need to do is give it an ability to build a map and locate itself the way we do. So we as humans, if we go to new home or new mall or new indoor environment, what do we do first? We explore. And as we're exploring, we're already building a map in our head. We're already remembering where we started, where we're headed. And initially, if you go through that home or your friend's home, maybe just first time, you won't remember all the details. But if you go to your friend's home 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, you'll start remembering where he keeps his, bottle opener. You'll remember every single nook and cranny and be able to precisely navigate his home as well. So in the same exact way, can we give robot an ability to go into any indoor environment, self-explore, self-build the very high fidelity 3D map in a visual way, and then be able to go from point A to point B precisely 10 out of 10 times in any sort of lighting changes or obstacle changes and things like that.
Mhm.
And if you do that, then you can really enable robot to do various things in our home on top of it. And floor cleaning was just a perfect beachhead from technology point of view as well as business point of view. So from technology point of view, we realized that by definition, if you're cleaning floors, You have to explore and clean every inch of an indoor surface. So in the context of cleaning, you're building a map. Then you have to give an ability to clean it, to go through it again and again and again, because floors gets dirty multiple times a day. So as it's going through again, can it understand the changes in the environment, dynamism of it, and self-update the map? And then can it go from point A to point B precisely 10 out of 10 times? So can you tell it, hey, Matic, go clean kitchen, or go clean mess in a kitchen specifically, and it knows what mess is and it knows what kitchen is.
Mm.
How can we enable that sort of use cases? Because that's the way we'd like to go. And those use cases just weren't possible with single pixel LiDAR or any of sort of technology. We thought vision was the right way to go. Not only that, but as soon as you bring cameras into the home, privacy becomes an issue.
Mm.
Latency becomes an issue, because no matter what we do, there is some portion of a home where Wi-Fi is just horrible. And you don't want a robot that says, oops, I'm not going to do things because Wi-Fi is weak, or oops, I fell down the stairs because Wi-Fi is weak. So latency is an issue. And as I mentioned, indoor spaces are far more dynamic. Things change quite a bit. So map has to be dynamic. It has to be constantly self-learning, self-updating device. And all these things we thought were feasible in 2018, 2019 because of these AI chips coming out, because of the advances in AI. And if you can solve that problem, then we're really building the whole robotics in a algorithms first approach, computer vision first approach versus the sensor first approach. And that's the fundamental difference. And from a business point of view, you know, most people are somewhat happy with their robot vacuum, or I want to say they tolerate it. But I don't think I've ever met
All
anyone
right.
who claims that robotic vacuum changed my life. We do
Mm.
claim that cell phone changed my life, or iPhone changed my life, or this car changed my life. But you don't actually ever say someone that, oh, you should absolutely get this product; it will change your life. That sort
So,
of recommendation never
so this
exists.
was the goal. So this was the
This was
goal,
the goal.
having.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here's the product that everyone uses, yet no one likes it, yet no one recommends it. So what's going on? And that's when we started digging into what is referred as NPS score, Net Promoter Score, which is how
Mm.
likely you are to recommend a given product to your friends and family. Turns out NPS score for Zoom, something like Zoom, is measured from -100 to 100, is around 50s. Apple products are 60s, Tesla is even 70s or higher, even higher. Turns out entire robotic vacuum category NPS score is -1. It's a product that almost gets disrecommended, yet it's growing 20% year over year. Not only that, but with female customers, the NPS score was -17 to -33, which means most of the people who are actually trying to use it, they hate it. They hate it. And almost always 3, 4 months into the usage, they will drop it into the closet and it will never come out. So yes, this
Interesting.
device. So here's a product that no one likes, that no one recommends, yet they're selling like hotcakes. What that means is that intensity of a problem is so high. We hate cleaning so much that we're willing to tolerate all these shortcomings of a robot vacuum just to use it. So in this market, if you can come and build a different product and build a really good product from first principles and truly solve the problem, then maybe there is an opportunity.
Mm.
And then it boils down to what problem you're solving. So the cynical side of me says that the only and okay, so I'll take a step back. For 2002, when Roombas launched for the first time, for that world, Roombas are an amazing advancement and amazing technology. For 2017, it wasn't, and for 2024, it certainly isn't. And cynical side of me says that the reason they're flat and circular is because circle by definition is hardest to get stuck, and flat because it can, again, it didn't have any vision, it didn't have any maps, it just needed to bump and not get stuck as well, which is great. But that all meant that only thing it really did well was clean underneath the furniture, and they really hyped that up as a feature. But as a person with 3 kids and a family and a dog, most of my cleaning needs on a day-to-day basis aren't underneath the furniture. It's about, hey, my kid spilled something in a kitchen. Can you just go clean it? Or I have a Astro walking around, my dog walking around, dropping his hair, and when he drinks out of his water bottle, water is everywhere. Can you just go mop it? So just the visible area cleaning on a day-to-day basis was much bigger chore for me. So we realized that, look, we are trying to build the SUV-ish of this sort of robot, that there is a purpose. If the primary use case is cleaning underneath the furniture, Roombas are great. By all means, buy them. We're not competing on that. We're competing on and building product for families with busy lives. For them, Legos are everywhere, toys are everywhere, wires are everywhere, homes is a clutter. Can it navigate without making it bigger mess for him? Can they tell it to clean just where kids spill or kids just ate, or because kids are, I think to think of them as a walking tornado of entropy generator with their
Sounds
crumbs
good.
and things.
Sounds about right, I guess.
So that's the how we thought about it, and that's what we were trying to solve the problem. And I'll make one final analogy. So one final analogy is that we also took a step back and say, okay, what does it mean to have a fully autonomous robots for home? What does it even mean? How do you even think about it? So we extended this analogy that look at fully autonomous cars, level 5 autonomy cars means that cars drive like humans. Then in this case, robots must behave like humans and clean like humans. Okay, so if they're supposed to clean like humans, if robot vacuums are supposed to clean like humans, that's what we want. Then why are they built to sit on the dock 23 hours a day? That's stupid. That's not what we do. We walk around our home. If you find a egregiously dirty spot, we're going to clean it. So why doesn't it, maybe take off from the dock multiple times a day, look for dirt and dirty spots, and if it finds it, it should just clean it. Well, for that, it has to understand what is dirt, what is dirty. That's a
Mm,
computer vision problem. Not only
mm,
that, but most of these robots get off the dock and start cleaning right besides the dock.
mm.
That's like us taking a vacuum out of the closet and cleaning besides the closet. That's stupid. That's not
Yeah,
what we do.
yeah.
We start with the dirtiest part of the home and work backwards. Should remember over time that which part of our home gets dirty, right?
Mm,
Um, Not only that, but they have zero element of memory. So let's say they get off the dock, start cleaning. You pick it up, put it on the dock again, press start. It will clean the same stupid area for another 15
yeah,
minutes.
okay, okay, I got it.
Memory that I just cleaned it, right? It doesn't understand that I'm about to clean carpet or a rug, or this is a rug with tassels, or these are the thick power rugs, or this is a threshold and I need to go over it. So none of this intelligence really exists. And the whole idea was that, hey, why doesn't robot get smart enough to know that most families eat? And once they cook dinner and eat, usually they get up and start cleaning. So maybe that's a perfect time to start coming and cleaning in kitchen and
Mm.
dining area. It should just understand our rhythm and do it. We shouldn't have to keep telling that all that stuff. I shouldn't have to define the border to say what is kitchen. It should just know. So all these things we just felt like were fundamentally vision problems and intelligence problems, and no one had really solved this. And the way disk robots were built, they would never be able to go solve that problem. So we just had to reinvent the whole thing from scratch.
I Thanks for really giving us an in-depth idea about what Matic is. What I really like about this is a few years ago, I was working for in the corporate startup environment and bringing together startups to solve problems for big corporates.
Mhm.
One of the corporates I was working for was BSH, and they are very
Uh-huh.
big in home appliance, one of the biggest
Yes.
manufacturer actually. And so this is a venture, yeah, was a venture between Bosch and Siemens, right? BSH.
Mhm.
And I was working together with engineers and product people of different departments. And what fascinated me was here we have engineers that are working in a very specific niche department for 20 plus years. So
Mhm.
everyone would like when you get into engineering or technology, you're thinking about rocket science and you think about self-driving cars and all those fancy stuff, or just like a mobile phone, right? But
Sure.
there's people that working 24, not 24 hours, but they're working their entire career in dishwasher
Yes.
and in refrigerator. And the thing
Yes.
is, a few people own a Tesla. Very few people have access and ever will see a rocket from very close, right? So these are the fancy, cool things that you see on television and social media, but everyone has a refrigerator at home. Everyone has a dishwasher at home. So I was fascinated
I,
by how in depth you can go on how to unload or load a dishwasher. Right? So there's
yes.
so and so hearing you
Right.
and because I mean without being how do you say this I don't know the English word first, but without being disrespectful to you, like
Sure.
cleaning a home is not the most sexiest thing you can do, right?
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
hearing you about like 10 minutes, like talking about this topic, it fascinates me too now. So I'm now thinking about, I mean, it's obviously my vacuum cleaner does no shit about anything, right? And it obviously it doesn't feel the way I feel because I'm in this home. I'm the one who cleans the who does the vacuum cleaning because I I would like to do it as good as possible. So every single corner. And my wife says, "Why are you spending like 1 hour on vacuum cleaning?" I said, "If I do it, and then I do it right. There's no point in just cleaning a few areas. Like I would like to have it very, very clean. So I put up everything and underneath. So I really like the excitement that you still have after 7 years talking about this topic. So thanks for
Thank you.
having us with you in that journey. I really would like to ask a few more questions that are interesting for me, so maybe you can answer them. How big is your team?
We're about 55 people at the moment.
55. That is actually pretty big. And you guys are situated in San Francisco.
We're in closer to San Jose in Mountain View, so closer to Google and Stanford campuses, so
Mhm.
about 40 miles away from San Francisco. So sort of heart of Silicon Valley is where we're located. And actually, for a robotics company or a hardware company, if we kind of look at what some of the companies that are nearby starting the same thing, we're rather small. So for a vertically integrated robotics company, 55, I would say, is a much, much smaller than typically we see companies having people in 200, 250 at the same stage we are in.
And now that you're seeing the humanoid hype, and and Neura put out a video about, and I think all the other ones as well, not all the other ones, but I think Tesla as well, having a humanoid that does these kind of repetitive tasks that are very boring and no one wants to do,
Right.
and not necessarily manufacturing, right? Right now we're talking about households.
Sure.
How do you see that one? Like having a humanoid in a few years doing everything that we can do, right? Because the world around us is built for humans. So,
Correct. Correct.
how is that making has that any influence in working on that product?
So great question. So the long answer is that we absolutely see humanoids or some version of Jetsons or Rosie the robot in our homes doing all kinds of chores for us. Because we as humans are creative species, we're not a repetitive species. So everything we do in home is mundane and repetitive, and can we save that time? So we do definitely see that happening. The question again boils down to when it happens. And right now, we feel that hardware is much, much ahead than necessarily the software needed to make everything work.
Mhm.
So I'll give you one example, which is you have never probably read any news article that says the 95-year-old grandfather fell onto the grandson or a puppy and killed it. Turns out we humans are so amazing at our balancing act that no matter how old we get, we don't actually hurt kids and other people on topic. So when will humanoid get to a point where I can guarantee that 60-pound or 60-kilogram humanoid is not going to fall on my child or break things? Because if it does once, it's going to create a giant hole in my home. And the reason I'm asking this question is that the difference between demo and actually it working in reality in your home is gigantic. And there are a lot of amazing demos, and they're all moving in the right direction. We just think it's far away. And we also believe that as a customer, I don't even have a robot, even a robot vacuum, let's say, um, do a task in a very intelligent way. So $1,000 device doesn't do it individually. Why would I spend $20,000 or $30,000 on a humanoid and trust it to do everything? And if you kind of compare that to, let's say, car buying, you mentioned Tesla, right? Tesla has cars. Well, cars, even after 100 years of proven utility, are a considered purchase. They cost anywhere from 20 to 30K, and they're a very considered purchase. Family discuss whether they really want to buy it or not. And typically, once you buy it, your expectations are that it will last for 5 to 10 years. Okay, so what sort of utility has humanoid has to prove for that to happen? So we just think that that future is absolutely coming, but that future is far away. And part of the reason is because the um, the bar for accuracy for robotics is actually much, much higher than, let's say, like Midjourney or even coding algorithm or ChatGPT. So what the way to think about this is, we go to school to learn how to code. We go to school to learn how to generate images or how to generate videos or create videos or shoot videos. And this requires very specific skills. And we spend years developing it. So if AI can get it 90% of right, we're mesmerized by it. But then we don't necessarily go to school to figure out how to navigate our own home without bumping. We don't go to school to learn how to pick up a glass or how to vacuum. These are very, very trivial tasks. So let's say you have a 99 humanoid that is accuracy level is 99% in picking up glass, right? Well, if it drops at 1 out of 99, 100 times, that's probably once a week it's breaking glass in your home. I don't know if customers are going to be tolerating that yet. So the bar for trivial task is actually much higher because things that are easy for us, we don't tolerate technology to be stupid about it. We want technology to be perfect about it. And that's really the dichotomy there. So we think it's far away. And the analogy, like history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it definitely rhymes. And there's a good analogy, historical precedence for this. And you short the iPhone that you have, the smartphone you have. So there was a company called General Magic, and there is an amazing documentary on it. But General Magic was a company started by pretty much entirely ex-Macintosh team that worked under Steve Jobs. And they tried to build iPhone, and they have exact drawings of iPhone and the apps on it from back then between 90 to 95, and they failed massively. Not because iPhone as an idea was incorrect, iPhone as a desire was incorrect. Not they were just way ahead of the curve. The technology wasn't ready yet. And instead, what we got was first we got the cell phones, then we got the PDAs, and then we got the Blackberries, and then we got the iPods. And then we realized that I don't want to carry 3, 4 devices. And then we combined everything into one uh, uh, product. In the same exact way, at least for consumer robotics, we tend to think that it will be a single purpose robots over the next 5 to 7 years, which proves out the efficacy, which proves out the utility. And then eventually it will all get combined into some version of humanoid that just does all the tasks for you. In factory, it's easier to deploy humanoids. So in an enterprise environment, we tend to think they will come slightly faster because that's where you can dedicate humanoid to just a single repetitive task 24 hours a day if you needed to do it. But in home, you don't necessarily need to fold clothes 24 hours a day. It's maybe 1 or 2 hours a week, and then you go to different things. So needs are separate and different.
So I think I need to say that I don't know if how I can put this in the promo for this episode, but everyone who is listening, listen very careful to this last few minutes because we have here someone who really understands the way to use analogies to to make it very easy to understand what is the benefit and why things take time, why things are happening at a certain time. So I think there's a lot of learning here. You're doing a wonderful job in marketing and selling. You said that this is your part, and I think you're doing a wonderful job because founders need to have this skill set of selling. And it's not like sales selling because this is always very negative connotated, but it's ensuring the survival of the project, right? And
Yeah,
this is a
absolutely.
skill set that you do need not only for your company as a founder, but it's also a skill set that is necessary even within a team. If you have an idea that you think it's good enough, you need to be able to sell this idea. You need to be able to make people just caring as much about this idea as you do. So I think this was very well unfold. Yeah, the story was very well told, and I'm keen to see what's out for you guys, and I'm very thankful that you took us uh, through this journey somehow. And you're absolutely right. The hype is big.
Mhm.
I mean, I joined Nora because also about the hype, right? There's a very big robot portfolio that Nora shares, but in the very end, it is hard. Hardware is hard, and
Right.
until and you see this when you work in startups, and I've been working now for a few startups in that area in manufacturing. You were talking about 99%, right? If you're talking to one a car manufacturer, automotive, 99% is not enough. It needs to be
Yes,
99.99999. So this is enough.
I agree.
And and then you need to have a redundant system. So you need to be ensure even if this breaks, I need to have a solution that so I can flip it very easily. Because if the line stops for 1 minute, that's 30K. If it's two
That's correct.
minutes, 3 minutes, someone loses his jobs.
That's
Uh,
correct.
and
That's
and
correct.
and the CEO knows immediately, right? So it's very nice that you guys or that you are able to to sell me this pen, right? So but not only selling me, but really making me understood why you guys believing in your mission. So this is a masterclass of how to get money for your product, and but also aligning internally. You do need to have a team that understands the mission, that understands the idea, what you guys would like to achieve. So, and I think this was very valuable. So thanks for
My
telling us.
My pleasure. I think you're spot on. I think to me, I would go even. It's not about selling or belief. It's just that you have to know your why. If you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and if you have a vision that you deeply believe in, have you thought through it? It's obvious. And what people usually get attracted to is this idea that, hey, turns out, as you kind of alluded, that if you just think about floor cleaning, there is so many elements of it. There's so much you can dig into if you just want to dig into, and really at the end of the day, it just boils down to, are you solving a problem or not? And turns out this is one of the most intense, frequent problem that everyone in the world has. So let's go solve it. And then hopefully our vision is always that right now what we are doing, how we think of Matic as a toddler that comes into your home. It turns out it can navigate and it can clean. But then can we evolve? Can we make it taller and now give it the body of a 7 or 8 year old, and maybe it can do decluttering as well, pick up the toys and organize it, and that's a already useful thing. And then eventually grow into humanoid. So there is a reason why nature has sort of evolved us. Like, we're not born full bodied on day one. So in the same exact way, maybe there is an evolution that the robots needs to go through to acquire all the skills that we have.
Yeah, and I think also digging into that is having a small one now. I'm very often ask my wife, so like this seems so easy to do, and it's so necessary for us as humans. Why does it take so long for her to understand, right? But then, I mean, the answer is very clear. It takes us so long because at the very end of this road, we are able to build the most complex things you can ever imagine. There's no animal out there. Some animals are being born and they can hunt, they can eat, they can do all things necessary for them to survive, but they cannot build something like this, right? So, and it takes time for our brain to develop fully. So being able to really understand and doing those things. Yeah, like I said, I'm very happy that you took the time and that you really took us on the journey of Mehul, but here now also on Medic. Um, I'm always asking this, and it seems like a like cliche question, but you said it also. So what's do you have a long term? Because now it seems like you're sneaking into the what other kind of robots we might be building in the future. Is there anything you can share? Is there a master plan? Is there
Yeah, I
anything?
think the master plan has always been to go build Rosie the robot from Jetsons. I don't know if you're familiar with
I
that thing,
know,
but
I do,
it's
I know.
yeah, so it's just like, okay, can we have a fully autonomous butler, fully autonomous sort of maid robot that does everything for us? That was always the goal. And that's where, as I mentioned, we felt like that would be a 20-year journey that we can go on and solve problems. But we want to solve it in a piecemeal way while shipping products, because you can be in R&D for a long, long time. And a lot of self-driving car companies have been R&D for like 10 years, 15 years, right? We didn't want to be in that R&D phase for a long time. We thought that it was very important to get inside home, start understanding user needs and user problems. And then once we do that, users will tell us what the problems are, and then we can start thinking about it. So we've constantly heard, and you mentioned you are a parent, so we've constantly heard from parents now that, hey, great, can you just build me a toy cleaner robot? Gosh, I would pay, hundreds of dollars if toys can just organize themselves again, because I'm just tired of all the items on the floor that my kids throw, right? Then, as we started shipping robot to customers, some customers came back and say, "Hey, can I actually take this robot and put it in my parents' home because I live in California, they're in Florida. I don't necessarily trust the cleaner that come there. Your robot would be great; it will clean, and I want to control it remotely. I don't even want them to control it. I will control it.
Mhm.
But you also have a cameras, so maybe I can actually see through it and keep an eye on them as well. Maybe there is a monitoring for my parents as well. So these are all, so then you're starting to get into the elderly care sort of realm as well. So it just boils down to, what use case they are, what problems people want to solve. So and we always knew that once we ship this first version of the product, people will tell us what those problems are. And then I think I alluded to, which is almost always when we decide to solve problems, we tend to look at four different things. So one is this an intense problem? If it is an intense problem, you will tolerate even somewhat imperfect product, and every product in the initial part of its life is somewhat imperfect. So that's necessary. Is this a frequent problem? Which is, are you facing it again and again on a daily basis? So, when we are hungry, we are hungry. It's an intense problem and it's a frequent problem. And that's why there are so many, and everyone in the world faces it. So it's clearly a huge TAM. And that's why food companies get so big. In the same exact way, floor cleaning was. So is this an intense problem? Is this a frequent problem? And how many people in the world have this problem? So that's one. And then the fourth criteria is, can we solve it elegantly? Which is, there are lots and lots of inelegant solution. In a smartphone world, if you think of all the PDAs and stylus-based smartphones or those keyboards, they were all inelegant solution. Even in BlackBerry, even though it was fairly ubiquitous, it was just ubiquitous with business users, and it was also in some ways inelegant. Do we genuinely believe that smartphones would be as ubiquitous as they are today if iPhone never arrived? The answer is probably not. So there is an element of simplifying technology and productizing and using it that solves the problems. In the same exact way, first set of Roombas and robot vacuums were great as a starter product. And now can we turn it into a really, really elegant product that we can't live without? And then can we solve the next set of product problems in that way as well? Because if you build an inelegant solution, it might find attraction for a bit, but it's not necessarily going to be the most one that changes the world.
Like I said, always fascinated about the depth um, of such a how do you say this? Um, I don't know the English word for it, but it's like a problem that you're not really thinking about, but that's omnipresent. Like
Exactly.
almost everyone I know has a home, right? So
Yeah.
and everyone hates dirty floors. So like you said, there's always the question of ease of use. For me, this is very important. I hate
Mhm.
I hate this, and I think the majority of companies, especially tech companies, and I've been working with a few IT departments, is like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is the way things are because of the history, because of the architecture that we built. So this is the best solution out there. Just today, I was filling out some documents online, and
Yes.
there are better ways to do it, right? And there are better ways. There's a lot of improvement areas. So if you tap into that, I think that it's a great option.
It's a great opportunity. I'll leave with one final thing for your audience. I highly recommend this essay that Paul Graham has called Schlep Blindness. I just thought about it because you alluded to this unsexy problem point of view, and he Schlep is a Yiddish word for unsexy, unpleasant, and he
Hmm.
talks about this idea that we as technologists and nerds and sort of science fiction aficionados, we love to think about cool stuff, but his point is that most of the great ideas are actually the everyday things that no one notices. These are the problems we just take for granted and live with it because that's just the way they are. And if you can take a step back and look at the schlep and solve it, that's where the opportunity is. And again, Stripe is a good example because infrastructure is a schlep and no one it's not cool and sexy. Nest thermostat is another example of a product that is really, really uncool, or at least was uncool until Nest made it cool. And just as one last thing, I would say the most successful company in our Y Combinator batch. I was part of a Y Combinator in 2012, winter 2012 with Flutter. The most successful company out of that batch is a company called Gusto. And all they do is build a payroll software. They enable other people to pay their employees in a very, very simple way. And that company is worth, I believe, more than $10 billion now. So
This is
this is
crazy.
where it's absolutely there. So we always talk about this internally as well, that we should remember that AI and robotics are a means to an end. No one wants robots and AI; they want solution to their problems, and AI and robots can solve it. So let's keep that in mind. So that's where we can probably put the closing end to this.
Like again, I'm very thankful that you took the time and that you shared some yeah very important moments in your life and really went into depth. but also some learnings that you shared with us, right? So thank you again for
100%.
taking the time. And whenever we'll be in San Francisco, there's a humanoid summit that comes up on the 11th and 12th. And right now I'm in the middle of thinking about should I go? It's just 2 days, and it's quite a hassle going here from Berlin to there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, it's super close to us in a computer history museum, and we will be there actually. So yeah, if you come by, please let me know, and maybe we can connect and show you everything about Matic.
That would be awesome. Thank you and
No
take some
problem.
care.
Likewise. Thanks.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.